All right. Happy Friday, everybody. Good afternoon, all you magnificent melon heads, and happy Friday, everybody. Today's November 15th already. Wow, 2024. And it is time for my favorite part of the week, my weekly wrap-up live stream. And guys, we got to focus today on what I think should be the biggest story in the world of finance right now, considering the potential implications. All right, you guys know my position about artificial intelligence and AI. I think the whole thing is a bubble. I think the technology is neat. It's cool. It does some stuff that I think adds value. But besides the neat, the cool, kind of like the internet was neat and cool in 2000, the business world has taken it and just ridiculously blown it out of proportions. And in my opinion, AI Mania is the largest accounting fraud and the biggest speculative bubble in history. And I kid you not, if you look at how much market cap the S&P 500 has added since ChatGPT was released, and by the way, the board of directors at OpenAI found out via Twitter that was happening, but that's a whole other story. Besides that, since ChatGPT was released, something like 18 trillion with a T, $18 trillion of market cap has been added to the S&P 500, almost entirely driven by the Magnificent Seven, which has been entirely driven by AI. All right. And now one of the poster children for AI, one of the smaller players outside of the Mag 7 has been Supermicro Computer. And we've talked a lot on this channel about how Supermicro Computer has a documented history of fraud. Oh, newsflash, people who commit crimes and get away with it tend to commit more crimes. I know, it's shocking. You might be surprised to learn this, but studies are rather definitive on the matter. Scumbags remain scumbags after getting away with scumbaggery. And yes, M&J, I know you still want your dirtbaggery t-shirt. It's in the works. I'll talk to the prop department. I don't have a prop department. But Supermicro has a very big deadline coming up this weekend. Tomorrow, Saturday, is their 60-day deadline to either file their 10K, their annual report that they failed to file at the end of September, or submit a plan to the Nasdaq, a detailed plan to return to compliance. And well, what happens next? A lot of people are like, so what happens? What happens to my money if I own these shares? What happens to my shares? Can I still trade them? All this other stuff. Well, luckily, history has given us a very good example of what happens when this deadline approaches, because Supermicro did the same freaking thing in 2018. We have literally been in this exact place before. And that's why I'm just shocked that a $18 trillion stock bubble has formed around companies like this. By the way, NVIDIA, documented history of accounting fraud twice already, 2000 and again in 2018. And I would be just shocked, just amazed, just surprised to learn if they ever did it again, considering they got away with it twice already. All right. So we got a lot we want to get into on this story, show you what happened the last time Supermicro got delisted. And while I was researching for this segment, I found a story I had never heard of before. It was before I started this channel, or like right around the time I started this channel, and before Supermicro had become a household name because of the AI bubble. But when I got into this story, I was, oh my God, the people at this company. Now, there's some asterisks attached to this other story. It's called The Big Hack, and you don't want to miss this one. Wow. So we're going to get into that story, which I think warrants a second look, considering what we've learned about Supermicro in just the last couple of days. And so we're going to cut me a little short today, shrink my melon of a head right away. I promised Mish I would do a quick monologue today because I wanted to have enough time to get to the big hack story. How did I do, Mish? Did I cut it? Was I short enough? The whole brevity.
You're sufficiently less verbose.
Yes, sufficiently less verbose. Yeah, we had to cut down on the verbosity today to make room for the big hack story. And I don't want to run out of time for the big hack story. So I think we're going to get right into the market wrap up for the week here as we enter the last hour of trading here. And we got to get to this Supermicro story. And, besides the Supermicro story, it's been a pretty rough day for stocks, hasn't it? I mean, look, S&P here down 76 points here. These are, by the way, guys, these are 5-minute candles. I was having some issues with investing.com this morning. So I just said, you know what? We're going with StreamYard today, or not StreamYard, with TradingView for the 5-minute charts here. So the S&P down 1.3%. This is looking at just the trading day today. We're just off the lows of the day that we hit around 2:30 as we head into the last few minutes of trading. Now, if we set this to daily candles, and we zoom out a little bit, it's been a pretty rough week. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red days in a row for the S&P 500. It's been down every single day this week. A noticeable deviation from the endless parade of new all-time highs that we've seen pretty much all freaking year. I mean, look at this. Let's zoom out to the beginning of the year. Nothing but new all-time highs. I think we had more days spent at all-time highs this year than we had days spent not at all-time highs this year. Well, it's been red all week for the S&P. Looking at the Dow here, again, 5-minute candles. Dow is also off its lows to the day, but still down big, 265 points, about 0.61% lower for the Dow. And when we zoom out, look at one-day candles here. Let's go back to the start of the year. Again, the Dow faring a little better than the S&P this week, but not by much. We've had 3 red, 2 green this week. Still down on the week. There was some little bits of green mixed in between here. But again, not closing at an all-time high, which you'd think that's a normal thing, not closing at an all-time high. You're not supposed to make new highs every single day. Pay attention, Bitcoiners. But here we are. We actually had some negativity in the Dow. Now, the Dow was the best performing index this week, despite being down. Let's look at the Nasdaq here. 5-minute candles. This is just today here. Nasdaq is down really big, off the highs, off the lows, just barely, down 442 points right now. 2.3% lower. There's been a bloodbath in the Nasdaq. Now, this is the third Friday of the month, so we did have options expiration today. So it's possible options expiration is contributing to the volatility in the Nasdaq here a little bit, but it's been a really rough day. It's also possible that people are selling ahead of this SMCI story. Supermicro is not a huge component of the Nasdaq, but it is a dotted line to some very big components of the Nasdaq, i.e. the Mag 7 and NVIDIA. And it's possible that there's some Supermicro contagion. Maybe that's contributing to a little bit of the selling here. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, let's go to one-day candles on the Nasdaq here. Again, really rough week. Let's make it the same. Let's do the whole year here. Much like the S&P 500, 5 consecutive red candles in a big way here. The Nasdaq has had a really rough week. Let's see, we closed last week at 19,286. Here we are at 18,656. So pretty rough week. Down, what's that, about 600 points for the week? Really bad day, really bad week for the Nasdaq here. That risk on that started with Trump's reelection, we're definitely seeing some of that unwind here. Now, we're still up since Election Day, but not by very much. So little bit of correction going on in stocks here this week. Now, the DXY, this is kind of interesting. Let's set this to 5-minute candles, not 3. The DXY, it's been kind of all over the place here this morning. It was down. It's down again here, but it's rising into the close. And it's only down about 9 basis points at 106.77. Now, the really interesting thing, and me and Mish were talking about this before we went live, when you look at the daily candles, this is kind of crazy. First of all, let's zoom out to the start of the year for consistency. We are at the highest point, other than yesterday, that is. We're at the highest point that Dixie has been at all year long. So a lot of dollar strength here. And you may have noticed, look at this run up in the last couple of weeks here. Pretty substantial run for the Dixie. It's been going up in almost a straight line. Took a little bit of a break at the end of October. But it started right here on September 30th. Is when the Dixie hit its bottom, and we've done nothing but rise ever since. The dollar has been strengthening constantly. And I was going back through the headlines of my morning live streams and just going back at some of the stories, trying to figure out what caused that bottom in the dollar on September 30th. Mish, good catch, because it was Mish was the one who caught it, that is the end of the fiscal year. And just a few days later, we had this one. This is in the Daily Hodl, not a website I frequent, but they're making a good point here. Now, this article is dated October 2nd, but it's talking about what happened on October 1st. The U.S. government added $204.2 billion to the national debt on the first day of the new fiscal year. Man, talk about starting a year with a freaking hangover after New Year's, right? The government's like, oh, it's a new day. It's a new year. What am I going to do? We're going to do something differently? Hell no, you romantic fuel. Borrow $204 billion on the first day of the year. That'll send us on our way to success to start the new fiscal year. So it seems only natural that the dollar becomes more scarce, more desirable, and well, not more desirable, but more scarce when the government hoovers up 200 billion of it on a single day. Yeah, there's not going to be much more of it floating around. And so that sudden surge of borrowing, which does usually happen, I would add, you usually do get a lot of borrowing on the first day of the fiscal year, but it was particularly large this year. And that is what caused this ridiculous run up in the Dixie, which began on that day, or it began the day before, and it's continued all the way through. Now, let's look at the bond market real quick here. Not a lot happening in bonds, all right? 30 years down or up 2.5 points, 10 years up 1 point and change, 2 years up not even a point. The 1 month is actually up a little bit as people adjust. It's up 3 points here. People are adjusting their expectations for the December rate cut. But the interesting thing I want to show you guys about the 10-year yield, and again, this is something Mish spotted, very similar to that chart with the Dixie, all right? Again, here's the Dixie chart, right? You see that curve, the big run up in the DXY? We got the same thing happening with the 10-year. Now, the 10-year, very similar chart. Now, here's the thing. The 10-year started back here right around the FOMC. Remember that 50 basis point rate cut with the Fed. So it didn't start with the new fiscal year, the run up in the 10-year. That actually started a few days earlier when the Fed cut rates. Again, the Fed forgot to tell rates that they were going lower. But then you can kind of see, if I get rid of some of my squiggles, here you go. You can see at the end of September there, September 30th and October 1st, that was also kind of like a mini bottom here. And you had a very similar run up in the 10-year yield. So I think, guys, this move up in government bond yields, this strengthening of the dollar, it is, in my opinion, totally due to this surge in government borrowing and the issuance of new government debt. In other words, the fiscal house it's not in order in DC. You may be shocked to learn this, or maybe not if you've been paying attention. Looking over at commodities, we've got gold is down again today, $2,561 for spot gold. It's down about $3.50, 0.14% lower. Spot silver is off by about a quarter here, $30.20, down about 80 cents. Copper's down 0.5%. Platinum is flat. Palladium is up 2.2%, $946 for palladium futures. And WTI crude is down pretty big here. Look at this, $66.97 for WTI crude for December futures. That's down another $1.73, 2.5% lower. So we've got oil heading lower here. Not surprising, seeing strengthening of the dollar, rising interest rates, see oil lower in that environment. And of course, we got to check in on Bitcoin, back above 90,000 here. It looks like Bitcoin's having a little bit of a run in just the last couple of minutes, because we were 89,000 when I went live, and now here we are about to break 91,000. So, hey, Bitcoin hasn't made a new high in almost 3 days. What are you guys waiting for over there? Almost 91. Come on, give me a 91 so I can, there you go. $91,004 as priced on Coinbase. What's up, Mish?
No, I was going to say, he gave it for you.
Yep, there we go. Every now and then the market cooperates and gives me what I want. Every now and then, very rarely. Before we get into the Supermicro story, I want to take a minute to thank Schrodinger's nuclear facility. Tell me you were watching my morning live without actually telling me. And I know who this is. This is my buddy Wes, because I recognize, there he is in parentheses. I recognize the Command and Conquer General's 0 hour icon there. He says, with some of us
he did say that was in reference to this morning.
What's that?
He did say that was in reference to this morning.
He was, yeah. The Israelis, it turned out, if you guys didn't see the morning live, I'll give you the skinny real quick. Turns out the Israelis did bomb an Iranian nuclear facility back in that retaliation a few weeks ago, when they said they weren't going to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, because the Iranians said, basically, we'll mess you up if you hit our nuclear facilities. But the nuclear facility that they hit is one the Iranians have been denying was engaged in nuclear weapons research. So did they or didn't they hit a nuclear facility? Well, if nobody admits it was a nuclear facility, even though they blew it up, did it really happen? It's not really a nuclear war unless the spokesperson admits it in the press. I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but it's practically science.
Yeah, I mean, if a bear craps in the wood, did the tree really fall?
And if it lands on Charles Lang, CEO of Supermicro, does anybody care? Huh? Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? That was hurtful. I should take that back. I'm not taking it back, though. Let's get to Schrodinger's nuclear facilities question. He says, with some of us who haven't gotten into Bitcoin, what trustworthy source do you use to purchase yours, and how do you store them? All right, that's a good question. And let me just say, when it comes to Bitcoin, trust nobody. And I'm not talking about me. That's a lowercase nobody. Trust nobody, all right? I trust nobody when it comes to Bitcoin. Now, I do use Swan to buy my Bitcoin, all right? And there's an affiliate link down below. Let me put the asterisk out there that I use Swan, but I don't trust Swan. I buy my Bitcoin and I don't leave it there. And Swan actually recommends this exact thing, which is why I'm comfortable recommending Swan. If you follow their instructions and as soon as you buy it, get it off of their exchange, then you're safe. And then I use
I actually go a step further. I do that auto withdraw with the I do it at 0.1. I think Jack, I think you do auto at a little more than that, but you can set the auto withdrawal at really low, like 0.01 Bitcoin. Just automatically sends it to you every time you hit it.
Yeah, it moves it off of the exchange wallet and into your cold storage hardware wallet. So ultimately, that's the destination, regardless of who you buy it from. Get it off of the exchange and put it into cold storage where you and only you control the private keys to that wallet. So that's how I store it. It's a good question, Wes. And also, guys, I would tell you, do your research before you start doing this, because moving Bitcoin around is stressful. I still get stressed out every time I do it. I don't do it that frequently. But if you mess it up, it's gone forever and there's no do-overs. So trust nobody. And that includes yourself. Be very careful and practice and do it right before you go messing around with it. And don't just pile in and put 100 grand into Bitcoin and then screw it up when you send it to a wallet, accidentally send it to your Ethereum address. Whoops, it's gone forever. Never coming back. There's no do-overs. So that is who I trust when it comes to Bitcoin. Freaking nobody, Wes. Thank you very much, sir, for the super chat and support of the channel. All right, guys, let's talk about Supermicro, because there was an excellent article that Mish found this morning about Supermicro. We were going to talk about it in the morning live, but I was like, you know what? We could actually spend a big chunk of the afternoon stream talking about this, because this takes you through step by step what happened the last time. And again, this is this shocking thing, how all these people in the press are like, oh, do you think maybe there's some truth to these allegations? Gee, maybe because they did it before. Yeah, I think surprisingly, there might be some truth to these allegations because they freaking did it before. It's like, oh, Charles Manson committed another murder. Do you think that could possibly be true? No, come on. Charles Manson, he seems like such a nice guy on the Netflix special.
Technically, Charles, I don't think actually committed any of the murders.
That's right. He had his disciples committed the actual murders. Yeah. But that's a good point, Mish. That being said, I would not be shocked to learn of additional accusations against Mr. Manson. Nobody has a right to be surprised, right? Martin Shkreli getting caught doing like a crypto pump and dump. Oh my God, really? A guy with 3 convictions for securities fraud? I'm shocked. Supermicro. You shouldn't be shocked. All right. So here's the article in Market Watch, and they do a pretty good job describing the dates in question the last time. So Supermicro Computer faces a looming deadline to outline how it will get back into the good graces of the Nasdaq, with the server maker on thin ice as it tries to maintain its listing on the exchange. But the company's past delisting shows that the process of reaching that point can be drawn out, with various extensions given along the way. All right, now for some quick background, if you guys haven't been following the story, Supermicro has already delayed their annual filing to review their financial controls. They said in a September filing that it was informed by the Nasdaq that it had 60 calendar days from September 17th to get the exchange's approval for a plan detailing how it will get back in compliance with its listing requirements. And of course, that gets to the date of November 16th, Saturday, tomorrow. Nasdaq rules on discipline state that the last day of the period so computed shall be included unless it is a Saturday, a Sunday, or a federal holiday, in which event the period runs until the end of the next day that is not a Saturday, Sunday, or a federal holiday. So considering that November 16th is a Saturday, that would mean that we wouldn't actually hear about a delisting until close of business on Monday. All right, so the Saturday deadline will come and go tomorrow, and we will hear nothing unless they're granted an extension between now and then. All right, so that's an important detail. If you don't hear anything by Saturday, it doesn't mean they were automatically granted the extension. All right, now Supermicro was delisted already back in 2018, which might mean that the Nasdaq has it on a shorter leash this time around. That is a huge huge point here. All right. This has already happened. This is their second run-in with the regulator or with delisting. There's an open DOJ probe. Ernst & Young resigned using some very damning language, basically saying we do not trust this management team and we won't sign our name to any of their financial statements. All right. So yes, they were granted all these extensions back in 2018. But if you're on trial for your second murder, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the odds of you being found guilty are significantly higher. All right. So in other words, I find it highly unlikely that the Nasdaq would grant them an extension here. How can the Nasdaq defend granting them an extension here? That to me, that would be like the Nasdaq saying, well, we don't want these stock prices to go lower. We don't want to mess with the AI bubble. So we're just going to go ahead and grant you the extension. And maybe we can hit a few more all-time highs and collect some more fees between now and then. And then, hey, who cares about the damage we do to investors? In the meantime, we just need to get our fees up.
Well, they could always put them on super secret double probation.
Super secret double probation. Dean Wormer. I didn't even know that was a thing. Give my regards to Mrs. Wormer. Yes.
When the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor.
I love that movie. That is a really good movie. I thought you were pre-med. Same thing. Let me know the movie in the comments. That's an easy one, guys. Every now and then we lob you softballs. All right, so back in 2017, Supermicro had delayed their annual filing and was notified by the Nasdaq that it had 60 days to submit a proposal for how it would get back in compliance. Exactly what happened here in 2024. Now, you'll notice September of 2017, that's when they missed their filing. That is exactly the September filing that they missed this time around. Supermicro said it could appeal if its plan didn't get accepted. When that 60-day deadline hit in November of 2017, the company said it needed more time to complete an audit review and finalize its financials. And the company was then given some time to submit a revised plan. So this is important. When this happened in 2017, they basically followed the same track they're on now. They were given 60 days. And before that 60-day deadline hit, they said, we're not going to meet the deadline. We need more time. That is exactly what Supermicro has done this time around. Now, they got that extension. We don't know if they're going to get that extension yet. Now, here's the thing. By March of 2018, after they got the extension, Supermicro's stock had still yet to be delisted, and the company sought a hearing with the Nasdaq at which it would present a plan to get back in compliance with Nasdaq requirements. So once you submit the plan and you're given this extra time, if your plan is rejected or if they don't like the progress in your plan, you can request a hearing, basically a trial with the Nasdaq. At the time, Supermicro noted in a filing that the hearings panel had the authority to grant it up to 360 more days from when the original filing was due in order to regain its compliance. So what we're saying here, guys, is this could potentially drag out until September of next year. I would be shocked if that happened, but there is precedent for it because this has happened before. Now, that May, Supermicro said it was on track to submit the needed filings, and the hearings panel granted it until August of that year to get current with the filing requirements. So they were given more time. They were given until August of 2018 when they had failed to make their filing in September of 2017. The panel said Supermicro was able to stay listed during that time, but the company fell short of that August 2018 deadline as well, with its shares moving to the over-the-counter markets after they were suspended from the Nasdaq. In all, it was a drawn-out process that investors shouldn't rule out this time around either. So, guys, they didn't just get delisted right away when they missed their 60-day deadline last time. So you missed the filing, so starts your 60-day deadline. You got 60 days to either submit the filing or submit a plan for getting back into compliance. Once you submit that plan, then you've got up to 360 days after the filing was due to actually get back into compliance. And if you want to, make your argument or make your case for that you're already back in compliance, you can request a hearing. And then basically based on the results of that hearing, you're either getting more time or you're delisted. It can go on for up to a year. So I went back and I looked at Supermicro stock. Now, these are daily candles. This is Supermicro stock at the end of 2017 all the way up into 2019. Now, I want to draw your attention to a few points here. This is where Supermicro missed their filing deadline. All right, you can see the big decline there. This is in September of 2017. All right, so the time goes forward, got a couple of months. All right, now we go all the way to November, to the filing deadline, November of 2017, right around here. They didn't meet the deadline, but they did submit their plan, and they requested an extension from the Nasdaq, and they got that extension. Now, you'll notice the stock rallied for a couple of weeks afterward. So that was not the bottom in the stock, though. Now, fast forward to January of 2018. They're still not in compliance. All right. They requested their hearing. What did the article say? I think it was in May. Okay. In March, the stock had still yet to be delisted, but the company sought the hearing. And then, let's see, in May, they said they were on track. So let's go back to the chart. So here's March. All right. Here's where they're not in compliance yet, but they're asking for a hearing. All right. Now, in May, apparently they say we're on track. They released a press release that says, in our opinion, we are on track to meet requirements. And look, the stock shoots higher on that news. People are buying a stock that is still under threat of delisting for accounting fraud. It's amazing that happened, but hey, here they did it. And by the way, note the share price here, $2.39. That's a split adjusted share price. But this is 1/9 of the price it's currently trading at when it was delisted the first time. Now, the stock didn't actually get delisted until August 24th of 2018, back in here. And this is when the delisting happened. Now, the interesting thing about the delisting is the stock, if we zoom in a little bit here, the stock actually bottoms out on August 21st. It didn't actually get delisted until the 24th. That's when the SEC sent them the letter. So the stock actually bounced on the news of getting delisted. That is amazing to me. Absolutely amazing that people bought a stock on the news of a delisting. So I guess they correctly bet that maybe there was a lot of negativity, that the delisting was already priced in, and so they caught a bounce. Now, this is when I got kind of surprised, because by now, if you've been watching this series of events and you're going through this timeline, you're probably noticing, hey, what was this low? What the heck is that, Jack? Because that happened months after the delisting. What the hell was that all about? And this is October 4th of 2018. And I was really surprised to learn this, because I had never heard this story before. And you guys know me, like I naturally sniff out negative news about these companies. Like I go looking for it. I go hunting for it. I had no idea this story was even out there. On October 4th of 2018, that was when we had this story in Bloomberg. All right. Now, here is where I have to put an asterisk on here, because this story to this day is still very hotly debated in the world of cybersecurity. Bloomberg stands by the story, but there's a lot of people, everybody involved in the story has denied it. The authors of the story stand by it. But to this day, depending on who you ask, they're either going to tell you Supermicro or a bunch of dirtbags, or this is fake news. So I want to throw that asterisk in there, that this is a very hotly debated story. It's still out there in Bloomberg, and Bloomberg stands by it. So I'm going to read you this story, but keep in mind that doubt as we go through it. But that being said, now that we are involved in our second case, in my opinion, a clear-cut case of accounting fraud involving Supermicro, and all the detail in Hindenburg Research and the Orca Fins reports about all the sanctions violations, about how they have been intentionally hiding, that they've been shipping huge amounts of these GPUs and their server racks to China despite U.S. export controls. And keep in mind, guys, Supermicro is a U.S. company, and the CEO and all of the owners and the executive team are Taiwanese, American and Taiwanese, and they're smuggling this crap into China so the Chinese military could use it. So if we know they do that, and if we know they would do multiple accounting frauds, these people are pretty clearly, how do I put this mildly, completely unethical, total freaking dirtbags running this company. So I am inclined to give this story a second look, knowing what we know about this company. All right. That being said, here's the story. The big hack, how China used a tiny chip to infiltrate U.S. companies. Now, this is October 4th of 2018. The attack by Chinese spies reached almost 30 U.S. companies, including Amazon and Apple, by compromising America's technology supply chain, according to extensive interviews with government and corporate sources. In 2015, Amazon began quietly evaluating a startup called Elemental Technologies, a potential acquisition to help with a major expansion of its streaming video service, known today as Amazon Prime Video. Based in Portland, Oregon, Elemental made software for compressing massive video files and formatting them for different devices. Its technology had helped stream the Olympic Games online, communicate with the International Space Station, funnel drone footage to the CIA. Elemental's national security contracts weren't the main reason for the proposed acquisition, but they fit nicely with Amazon's government businesses, such as highly secure cloud that Amazon Web Services was building for the CIA. You notice the CIA connections here. To help with due diligence, AWS was overseeing the prospective acquisition, hired a third-party company to scrutinize Elemental's security, according to one person familiar with the matter. Now, there's that guy familiar with the matter. Anonymous sources was one of the problems with this story, but when you're talking cybersecurity and intelligence, all you're ever going to get is anonymous sources. So this is where you get into the debate about this story because, yeah, would the CIA agent kindly stand up and show us his face and give us his name to corroborate the details? Obviously, that's not going to happen. The first pass uncovered troubling issues, prompting AWS to take a closer look at Elemental's main product, the expensive servers that customers installed in their networks to handle the video compression. These servers were assembled for Elemental by Supermicro Computer, Inc., a San Jose-based company commonly known as Supermicro. That's also one of the world's biggest suppliers of server motherboards, the fiberglass-mounted clusters of chips and capacitors that act as neurons of data centers, large and small. In late spring of 2015, Elemental staff boxed up several servers and sent them to Ontario, Canada, for the third-party security company to test, the person says. Nested on the server's motherboards, the testers found a tiny microchip not much bigger than a grain of rice that wasn't part of the board's original design. Amazon reported the discovery to U.S. authorities, sending a shudder through the intelligence community. Elemental servers could be found in Department of Defense data centers, the CIA's drone operations, and the onboard networks of U.S. Navy warships. And Elemental was just one of hundreds of Supermicro's computers, or Supermicro's customers. So basically, Supermicro, who was having these servers built and these motherboards built in China, they found, they call it a hardware hack. They installed chips on these motherboards that basically had the chips dial home. In other words, spy on whatever was going on in these servers and send all the data back to China. And they found this in Supermicro. Now, this was a huge story, and this caused Supermicro stock to go back to that stock chart of SMCI. That day, Supermicro stock, the prior day, it had closed at $2.15. It would hit a low intraday of 86 cents. So the stock sold off more than 50% on this news. It was a huge story. Problem was everybody denied it. Everybody. I found this one here. This is a couple of days later, on October 9th of 2018 in Vice. The cybersecurity world is debating WTF is going on with Bloomberg's Chinese microchip stories. Now, fun fact about this article in Vice, this article is written by three people, two of them, Jason Kobler and Joseph Cox. That's two of the four founders of 404 Media, which is a website that I am increasingly a fan of. 404 Media is the article that did the original, or the website that did the original article about the guy that glue your pizzas together. They were the ones who ran the original article about that. So 404 Media, I'm a big fan of these guys, even though I disagree with them on plenty of subject, but they've been highly critical of the AI mania. And they were on the Supermicro years ago, back when they were still working for Vice. So this article in Vice, a few days later, goes on to describe how since the article was published, you had Supermicro, of course, denied the allegations. You had Apple came out and said, nope, never had any Chinese hardware found installed on any of our stuff. Amazon came out and said, nope, can't confirm it. Nope, never happened, denied it. And of course, the national security people came out and denied it. Now, do you think the national security people, if they were currently engaged in some counter intel operations and they got a call from Vice Media, do you think they'd be like, oh yeah, sure, we know all about those Chinese spy chips that are installed in motherboards and that, you know, are sending covert information, and it turns out we accidentally installed these in our own fleet and they've been telling the Chinese exactly what our Navy has been doing. Do you think the national security people are going to cop to that on a phone call from a journalist? And so this article, I'm not going to read you too much of the detail from this Vice article, but it kind of goes into the problem with a story like this. How do you confirm these details? They're anonymously sourced. You're talking about intelligence. It's a notoriously hush-hush line of work. So there's no way to prove or disprove that. And considering that the companies that were involved had a lot of money on the line and stood to lose a lot of face, they came out and they denied everything. And so to this day, if you Google the big hack, you're going to find people saying it was so grossly irresponsible of Bloomberg and it was fake news. And you're going to find other people saying, oh, yeah, I know a guy in intelligence and he says this crap has been going on for years and it's common knowledge. So,
it's kind of like the, they had UAP talks yesterday at Congress.
Oh, more aliens.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's this guy that comes out and says, hey, these aliens have been following our subs for years.
Subs now?
Yeah.
Oh.
They're all underwater. And the biggest football fields. And they're
biggest football fields, as in like the ending of the abyss, like big giant thing coming out of the water.
Well, then they said, can you give us any specific evidence or points? No, because it's all still classified. Then what are you doing here?
Yeah, we could tell you about it, but no, sorry, that's classified when they ask you for proof.
Yeah, so it's a big deal right now, right? Because they, once again, the government said, yeah, we know about the UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them.
Well, but just the UAP, right? If I could real quick, Mish, I'm not to cut you off, but UAP, they're trying to soften the stigma associated with people who say UFO, right?
Yes.
The whole use of the acronym UAP is to normalize this story and slowly make people accustomed to it. Sorry, please go on.
Oh, no. It's just, well, it's another one of those things where, yeah, it's at Congress, in front of Congress, but there's no proof. So that's why I think people aren't screaming about it. It just made me think about that.
Now, have you seen the videos of the fighter pilots actually getting a radar lock on the things?
Have you known I've seen those videos for 20 years?
Okay, that's good. So I saw him when you were still in college, you schmuck. Yeah, this is what Mish says. Now, okay, so can you give me your reasonably well-informed personal opinion on the veracity of those videos?
So ever since we've had radar, we've had weird pickups, right? You kind of have to start looking at those videos. Is it an artifact of the light shining off of it? So many, right? I think Anton Petrov, the guy I follow, is always, his thing is it's never aliens, right? So you have to go into that thinking it's not the other way around.
Okay.
But there have been a couple that I've seen of those ones where they lock, the ones you're talking about, the lock on.
Right.
It's there's some weird ones out there. Because
they're describing, what was the wording, like very capable aircraft, or exceeded the capabilities of my F-18 Super Hornet, and they describe it as a craft of non-human origin.
Right, but they have it on radar, which is the crazy part.
Yeah.
Right. Artifacts of light usually don't bounce radar back at you.
Yeah, the thing has to have some
solid
mass or cross section to bounce off of, right?
Yeah, it's got to have that corner for it to bounce off of.
Yeah, a radar is an electronic echo. So, if it's just light does not send electronic echoes, to my knowledge anyway. Maybe, I don't know, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson in the chat. Does he want to weigh in on this one? But
well, speaking of Neil deGrasse Tyson, the Oumuamua came from outside the solar system, right? And there's, who knows if that was assisted or not. So there's always cool stuff like that out there.
Oumuamua, is that one of those?
That's that asteroid that came in really fast, zipped around and took off, but it was making some weird erratic movements.
Ooh. Yeah. Okay. So movements that would not be explained by the normal gravity forces in that area.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, gee. Yeah. And, the other thing, like the craft of
derailed you. I am sorry.
No, you did. But, one more point. When they say a craft of non-human origin, because they don't want to say aliens. Okay, it's non-human origin, but I think we can rule out the squirrels, right? The squirrels did not make it. So why are we inventing these phrases, UAPs, non-human origin? They're using all these things to subtly suggest aliens without saying UFOs and aliens because they don't want to sound crazy. It's hard not to sound crazy on this subject.
So on that topic, we did this mind thing in high school back in the 80s where we came up with different terms for things. One was, one night stand we turned into intense overnight relationship.
Okay. Intense overnight relationship.
Instead of saying that sucks, that inhales vigorously. So you can make things sound all kinds of cool if you just sit there for a second.
If you word salad it, yeah, mistakes were made. That's my favorite phrase when I say mistakes were made. No matter what happens, you can make it sound worse if you just brush it away by saying mistakes were made.
Oh, what book was that? That was from one of my kids' books. Mistakes were made.
Oh, there's a book about that now. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. Honey, the house burned down. Mistakes were made.
Yep. I think that's how there's like a bunch of books in the series, and every one of them was like the very beginning is there were mistakes were made or something like that.
So to get us back on track, and that was a good tangent, Mish. I like that one. So I'll give you points for that tangent. That was a really good tangent, I think. And if my buddy Travis is watching, I know he loved it. But check this one out here. Well, not check this one out. When I saw this Vice story and I see Apple denies it, Amazon denies it, the security people deny it. Whenever I see all of the big guys, all of the powerful people, all in agreement that something didn't happen, it makes me think that thing definitely did happen. And I can't help but be reminded of, before you short NVIDIA after reading investment advice from Twitter randos, read this. You guys remember the debunking theory about the whole, like, hey, AI Mania is one big giant accounting fraud run by people with a history of accounting fraud and shady relationships with shady companies that popped up out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, the financial media in unison all stands up as a chorus and says, ignore this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So when I see the story in Vice about how the cybersecurity world is debating and how everybody's denying this big hack story about Supermicro from 2018, it reminds me of Twitter randos. So I kept digging, and it turns out Bloomberg never retracted the original story of the big hack, even though half the country apparently thinks it's fake news. And actually, several years later, February 12th, 2021, we had this one in Bloomberg. Now it's not the big hack. Now they're saying the long hack, how China exploited a U.S. tech supplier. Again, talking about Supermicro here. For years, U.S. investigators found tampering in products made by Supermicro Computer, Inc. The company says it was never told, neither was the public. So Supermicro is like, we had no idea that Chinese were installing spy chips in our motherboards. Just like we had no idea we were committing accounting fraud again. In 2010, the U.S. Department of Defense found thousands of its computer servers sending military network data to China. Let me repeat that sentence, guys. In 2010, the U.S. Department of Defense, the Army, the military, the Marines, they found thousands of its computer servers sending military network data to China. The result of code hidden in chips that handled the machine startup process. In 2014, Intel discovered that an elite Chinese hacking group breached its network through a single server that downloaded malware from a supplier's update site. And in 2015, the FBI warned multiple companies that Chinese operatives had concealed an extra chip loaded with backdoor code in one manufacturer's servers. Each of these distinct attacks had two things in common: China and Supermicro Computer, a computer hardware maker in San Jose, California. They shared one other trait: U.S. spy masters discovered the manipulations, but kept them largely secret as they tried to counter each one and learn more about China's capabilities. So when you hear about how the intelligence community is denying it, the NSA, the CIA, they all deny the story. Well, if they had an ongoing counter intel operation, well, then of course they would deny it, right? You don't want to tip your hand. If you know the enemy is spying on you and reading your messages or you can plant information, you can do counter intel, kind of like the way we knew Midway was going to be attacked in World War II. We knew the Japanese had decoded our messages and that they were spying on the radio messages being sent between these islands. And so we We knew they had this code word for an attack on an island that was coming up, but we didn't know what island it was. I forget what the code word was. Miss, you may know this. This is Navy history. So we fed a fake story about the water purifiers on Midway not working. And the Japan network came back and said, code words water purifiers are out of business. So right away, we knew that Midway was the target. And then that set the stages for the decisive turning point in the Battle of the Pacific. I mean, that was huge. So, counter intel, once you know they're listening, that is very valuable information. And so you don't want to necessarily switch it off right away. You can use it to your advantage. And so they're saying that this counter intel operation, what did they say? That they first learned about it in 2010, then again in 14, then again in 15. And then Bloomberg runs the article in 2018. Everybody denies it. In 2021, they do a follow-up article that says it's still going on. So,
Hey, Jack, before you get too far, they were calling it AF, as in the letter AF, Alpha Foxtrot.
Oh, that was the nickname for Midway? Okay. There's probably an as-F joke hidden in there somewhere, but I was unprepared for that. So AF's water purifiers were not working. That's what it was. And that's how we knew when we put out a fake radio communication that Midway's water purifiers weren't working. And then the Japanese code breakers put out a message that says AF's water isn't working. We figured Midway was AF, and we knew AF was the target of this big naval operation. So we knew to put our carriers in place ahead of time. And another fun fact about that same story, and in the context of this is just coming to mind now. Before Midway happened, there was a war game exercise, a tabletop that the Japanese Admiralty did. And a low-level officer threw the curveball that said, let's say hypothetically the United States placed 3 aircraft carriers about 500 miles northwest of Midway Island, and they knew that we were coming. What would happen? And the entire strike fleet was sunk in the opening hours of the battle. And of course, the Navy admirals were so upset with this junior officer. The Americans don't know we're coming. This is ridiculous. Reset the exercise and perform it again with the prescribed parameters. Don't think outside the box. Don't do anything differently. Ignore investment advice from Twitter randos. And of course, it was like this guy was so accurate, this junior naval officer from Japan. He was like within 50 miles of where our carriers actually were. And it played out exactly how that war game exercise would have played. But you know what? He was a junior officer. He was a Twitter rando. We don't listen to those guys. So they ignored it. And they sent their fleet, and, well, that was the turning point of the war. So, wow, boy, the Midway analogy really holds up with this story, doesn't it, Mish? That's great. Wow. So, guys, let me ask you this. Now that we know this, I mean, is there any plausible scenario where the Nasdaq could defend granting an extension to Supermicro this weekend? I mean.
Well, they haven't even filed yet, and it's 4 o'clock Eastern?
Yep.
They've got until tomorrow to file it, but I don't know if you can do electronic filings over the weekend. So we'll know here pretty quick.
Now, well, we won't know if they're delisted until Monday.
Right.
The delisting won't happen this weekend. That we know because, if it's a Saturday
No,
or
what I'm
Sunday
saying
or
is
holiday.
they have to file the paperwork to get that pushed off. So they need to do it before the deadline.
Now, I don't know if would that require an SEC filing because the plan has to be submitted to the Nasdaq. They did file and say we're not going to meet the deadline, that we can't. We don't have an auditor. It's tough to file a 10K without an auditor. You're right, though. There hasn't been
a mechanism there, and they have to. I'm sure they have to notify the SEC.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Earlier this week, they notified the SEC that they won't file their 10Q on time. That's the other 10 that they're missing. The quarterly report that is now due, and that's almost an afterthought now because they're already 60 days late on their 10K, the annual report.
Speaking of SEC, did you see that Gensler is going to go away in January?
Bye-bye.
Date yet?
Bye, Gary. Yeah. No, I shed no tears for that MFer.
Yeah, he wrote a big letter yesterday or the day before. He didn't say he's resigning. He didn't give a date. People are saying the 18th. They're mixing the story of him saying, hey, deuces, I'm probably out of here soon, with the 18 states suing the SEC. So that you're getting like some cross November 18th, he's resigning. That's not in the news yet. It may still happen, but there's nothing proving that yet.
I did catch the whole, I'm so proud of the work I did. So, let's think of some of the highlights. What's your Gary Gensler highlight reel? You got private meetings with Sam Bankman-Fried that we never
Not
got a
stopping
chance.
SBF when he could have 6 months earlier.
Not what? I'm sorry about SBF?
Not stopping SBF when he could have earlier.
Yep.
When he had everything he needed and didn't do it.
I mean, not just not stopping. What were all those private meetings he was having with the guy? I mean, one could be forgiven for surmising that maybe Gary Gensler was privy to whatever SBF's plans were, maybe even involved in them. Let's see. Gary Gensler also did absolutely nothing about the taking away of the buy button to rob GME and AMC shareholders. Did nothing about that. Not a thing. Okay. Awesome job, Gary. And also the largest speculative asset bubble of all time, the AI Mania, happened on his watch. And it is so clearly a case of rampant round tripping. They're so clearly repeating the errors that they made and the crimes that were committed in the dot-com bubble. They're so clearly doing it again. Gary Gensler did nothing about it. Gary Gensler has also done nothing about the extend and pretend going on with commercial real estate, where they're avoiding price discovery like the freaking plague in CMBS. Gary Gensler did nothing about that. So I'm sure he's very proud of the work he did or didn't do or whatever it was the guy did. I will not miss Gary whatsoever. Bye, Gary. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you. And I just want to say thank you very much to Mighty Mike 53. He says, don't forget about XRP way up after the election. Mike, I don't follow XRP that closely. I'm generally not, I don't have a big opinion on XRP one way or another. I don't study it that closely. I don't get into altcoins. I own Bitcoin and I don't get involved in anything else because Bitcoin is really the only one that has consistently made all-time highs, new all-time highs following the halving cycles. Now, XRP maybe this time around is, but there's been other coins. There was Litecoin a few years ago, and then there was Solana, and then there was Shiba Inu. All these other coins have popped up, and some of them had magnificent runs, and then they sold off during crypto winter, and some of them came back, some of them didn't. Bitcoin is the only one that has survived every single winter and come back stronger every time. There may be a really good case for XRP. I'm just not familiar with what it is. And I think
in general, crypto is being pulled up with everything else. And, Doge is at 36 cents. It was at 7 cents 2 months ago. There's going to be little micro universes where things get pulled up. And I understand there's some lightning stuff going on with XRP. And I believe it's Eastern Africa. But the long case really isn't there yet. So, yeah, it's up.
What's the name of that network that's supposedly going to be based on XRP that's going on in the Middle East right now?
It's not Lightning. That's Bitcoin.
It was something a la Bretton Woods. I can't remember what it was called. It was
know in chat.
Yeah, there's supposed to be this payments network, this lightning fast payments network that the Middle East is working on that's supposedly going to use XRP infrastructure, if not XRP itself. I haven't looked that closely into it, to be honest with you, but I have heard about it several times. Maybe there's something there, maybe not. I find it once you get away from Bitcoin, you're wading into some dangerous waters. And not to lump XRP in with this group, but guys, the celebrity name tokens, oh my God, like every day there's like Martin Shkreli Inu, Caitlyn Jenner coin, DJT tokens, like Donald Trump coin. They're all pump and dumps. Like not with my worst enemy's money would I go anywhere near those. Buy Supermicro stock before you buy that crap. All right. And I'm not saying XRP is in that group, Mighty Mike, but avoid those celebrity tokens at all costs. JDAM coin. Yeah. Buy Melon coin to the moon, Melon token. Yeah, I can get you guys in on Melon token on the ground floor. It's the next big thing. Thank you, Mighty Mike. Appreciate the super chat, brother. And guys, the market is closed. Let's see where we finished the week at. Well, nope, that was the wrong button. There we go. Let's bring that back up here. Let's see. The S&P ended up closing at 58.70, down 70 points. We got to put this back on the 5-minute candles. All right, so not quite at the low of the day, but it didn't exactly rally into the close either. It was a rough day for the S&P. Let's set the Dow back to 5-minute candles. Where did we close in the Dow? Also off its highs, 43,447, down 300 points on the day, about 0.7% lower. And the Nasdaq going to 5-minute candles as well. The Nasdaq closed 18,685. Why are they saying market open? It's 410. Why is that saying that?
Oh, you're an after sale. There's that half an hour there.
I got the post-market times there. Anyways, down 418 points. Really bad day for the Nasdaq here, down 2%. So it was not a good week for stocks, but stocks were overdue for a bad week because they've done nothing but go up pretty much all freaking year. Number go up. That seems to be the case of 2024, 23, and the latter part of 2022. And it's all been driven by this AI mania. Supermicro, one of the poster children of that AI mania. At one point, that stock was up more than 2,000% this year. And now it's negative for the year. And it's going to go further negative. And barring some miracle, and I wonder who is going to sign their name, who's going to sign their reputation on an extension for Supermicro, given what we know about this company. And man, I would really like to know more about this big hack story. Something tells me we haven't heard the last of that one, but considering all the clandestine operations that might be involved, we may never know. But yeah, it'll be interesting to hear, guys. We probably won't hear one way or another until Monday. If we hear anything over the weekend, it's probably going to be that an extension was granted. So my guess is we won't hear anything this weekend, and we'll find out first thing Monday morning that Supermicro out of the Nasdaq. Now, when that happens, you're going to have some forced selling. You're going to have a lot of funds that cannot hold it anymore because it is now an over-the-counter stock, and a lot of these ETFs and mutual funds aren't allowed to hold that crap. And so there would be some forced selling, and I think probably a lot of those funds have already started selling that in anticipation of that. And the other one is if they get delisted from the Nasdaq, will they stay in the S&P 500? I mean, you can almost, the top was within a couple of days of when Supermicro was added to the S&P 500. And how are they adding companies with documented histories of accounting fraud to the S&P 500? Who approved that decision? Same management team, same people. Anyways, shout out again to the Orca Fin. Awesome work on Supermicro. I think this whole thing was set in motion by his Substack, which is now on Beehive. The Orca Fin, by the way, he's had a couple of really good ones recently. Kava. He's talked about Alta, he's talked about Wingstop, and he has nailed all of those calls. So he's becoming one of my favorite feeds on X and Beehive. So check that one out.
Hey, Broken Arrow says it's the Gulf let me try that again. Gulf Cooperation Council Real-Time Gross Settlement System, also known as the AFAC payment system.
None of that rings a bell. None of that rings a bell. Yeah, definitely GCC, not the long-winded.
Or TGS, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying that isn't it. That could be it. I could have swore it had some kind of like a proper name ring to it. Maybe it's AFAC, but I do know XRP was involved in that one. But like I said, it's something I don't follow that closely. Anyways, Mish, you got anything you want to add? Anything, I don't know, related to Supermicro or this deadline you think I'm missing here?
No, I think it's yeah, they're gonna be as lenient as they can on them, so Supermicro can't come back and say they were mean to us. So they have to, if they file for it, they'll probably have to really look at giving it to them or come up with a good reason not to. But I think they would already know if they were going to file for this extension. I don't think this is something you wait until the last minute.
Yeah.
So it's the bell closed, right? I think the business for Wall Street is done. I don't know what the Nasdaq rules are, but Wall Street's very, very much. This is when you do it by. This is when you do it by. There is no really leeway there.
So, having read the Ernst & Young letter and given Supermicro's history, do you think the Nasdaq? I mean, you kind of made it seem like they would require positive confirmation to not issue the extension right now. Yeah. Do you think the Ernst & Young letter, the short reports, the history, does it provide that confirmation that it's not? Or do you think, is the Nasdaq just going to give them the benefit of the doubt because number must go up?
No, they're already going down, right? So I don't know if they give them that or not. I really don't, because, they've got to start kind of being harsh on these guys a little, right? They've been a little lenient.
A little.
Yeah. It's kind of like these bank fees, right? Oh no, they charged him $60 million. Charged him $60 billion. See if that behavior doesn't change next time.
Yeah, make the fines more than the cost of doing business. Make it actually prohibitive to commit crimes. And, all of a sudden, less crime being committed. Amazing, isn't it?
Amazing
And a deterrent. Very interesting.
But
Last thing I want to add, guys, Supermicro is NVIDIA's third largest customer. And we've already seen the story that NVIDIA is diverting some of their Blackwell chips over to Dell, away from Supermicro into Dell. And so there's this belief that it's no big deal because Dell is just going to absorb this business. NVIDIA will still sell as many chips. That's possible. But the other thing, if you look at Dell's margins, they're near zero. Dell's revenue is growing gangbusters. Their earnings are going nowhere fast. Dell's not making any money selling these server racks. They're capturing market share, but they're not making any money. So if they're already doing all of this business, making no money, then what incentive does Dell have to work extra hard and ship a few more server racks to absorb the demand from Supermicro if they're not going to make any money to do it? So I'm not sure Dell is just going to step into that void and maintain this demand. And you better believe
the same thing about Initech.
About Initech?
Yep.
Or Intertrode, was that the other one?
It was Initech, I think.
Initech was Peter's company, and Intertrode was the competitor down the street, right?
Yep. He's talking to Bob when he's talking about that. Yeah,
it turns out you can make more money selling magazine subscriptions and working for either of those companies too. What am I going to do with 40 subscriptions to Vibe? Wow, that is a great movie. So yeah, this could materially impact NVIDIA, and that's why I think I'm spending so much time on this one today, because the second there is any dent in that NVIDIA growth story, you better believe those valuations are going to come back to earth across the board. And that's when this bubble goes pop. And I don't know, just remember, don't take your investment advice from Twitter randos. That's all. Nobody saw this coming. All right, guys. I just want to say thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your afternoon with the Melon Heads here. I appreciate that very much. Thank you guys for the super chats. Thank you to my magnanimous Melon Heads on Patreon and YouTube for supporting the channel. You guys rock. Links down below, should you feel so inclined. Thanks to Mish and my blue wrenches for keeping things neat and tidy in the chat. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you guys. Everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.